Hey everyone, I'm Aim Showtime, aka Zero Shift from Gilgamesh. In this video, I'll be teaching you how to effectively tank with Paladin in high-end content, which should translate to other things like dungeons, normal raids, and trials. Paladin for a long time has been intimidating for me because even though it has a relatively low skill floor, it has an incredibly high skill ceiling with optimization. After making it my main during the last Shadowbringers raid tier, Paladin has become my favorite tank because of its versatility. We'll go over Paladin openers, basic rotations, defensive toolkits, and mindsets going into high-end encounters. Let's get started. Let's talk about extreme trials, savage raids, and ultimates. These will truly test your skills as a tank player. These fights are extremely hard hitting, meaning being on top of your game with your defensive cooldowns will be key. These also feature enraged timers, so it is also your job to be able to deal damage. We'll go over Paladin's key defensive toolkits during these encounters, as well as how to DPS effectively. With the changes in Endwalker to Paladin, there are no more deterrents to main tanking. Due to Expatian no longer losing damage potency with lower HP, the buffs to Sheltron and its regen effect, and the healing received during your rec window with Holy Spirits. Although Paladin's toolkit is still lacking one personal defensive cooldown compared to the other tanks, and is still strongly suited toward off-tanking, main tanking with it is still a viable option, especially if you're comfortable with that role. With that being said, Paladin has a good balance between self-utility as well as party utility, making it a popular choice for raid groups and progression. Have a good mindset going into these fights. Wipes will happen. However, continuous repetition is the key to learning and perfecting your strategies and your rotation. Don't feel discouraged if wipes occur. New pull, new me. Alright, so my first tip is to open up strong. Having a strong opener is vital, as it is the strongest burst you will have, and it sets the tone for the rest of your rotation or your loop. As a Paladin, keeping your fight or flight and Requiescat windows on point is important to maintaining high DPS. I will demonstrate a standard opener and a pre-pull fight or flight opener, as well as your 64 and 61 second loops. Keep in mind, this is not an optimization guide. Paladin optimization is big brain. Each optimization changes depending on certain fights, so we won't go over that. The openers and loops I am about to show you are the basics. If you follow and practice these, then you will be able to upkeep your damage and you will have a good fundamental base for Paladin. Now let's go over your basic combos. You have two different physical combo finishers. The first is Goring Blade, which places a 21-second dot on your target. You want to make sure you apply this twice every fight or flight window, one right at the beginning and one right at the end. Your second combo finisher is Royal Authority, which gives you 3 Sword Oath stacks for 30 seconds. Each stack lets you do an atonement. Atonements are responsible for a lot of the damage you deal over the course of a fight. Requiescat gives you 5 stacks of Rec for 30 seconds. Each stack lets you instant cast one of your spells. It also greatly increases each spell's potency. During this window, you want to spend 4 out of the 5 stacks on Holy Spirits for 1 target, or Holy Circle for 2 or more targets. Holy Spirit and Holy Circle also heal you each time they are casted. Spend your last stack of Rec on your Confiteor. Confiteor unlocks your Blade combo, and it also automatically removes your Requiescat buff. Confiteor after use turns into Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, and Blade of Valor. All are instant cast spells, and all look super fucking cool, so they can be used from range, and they are also AoE damage. Blade of Valor also inflicts a dot on enemies when hit by it. This dot cannot be paired with the dot from Goring Blade. They will override each other. Now let's move on to the openers. Alright, let's start this off with the standard opener. So your opener will look something like this. This opener is recommended for most encounters, due to how simple it is and how versatile it is. Make sure you precast Holy Spirit at 2 seconds. It's just free damage. Begin with Fast Blade and activating your fight or flight towards the end of your GCD timer. Riot Blade, Pot, and apply Goring Blade. Start a Royal Authority combo using Expatian and Circle of Scorn after Fast Blade. Then Riot Blade, Requiescat, Intervene, then Royal Authority, then Intervene. Spend all your atonements and reapply your Goring Blade combo. 4 Holy Spirits, Confiteor, and finish with your Blade combo. Really important here to keep track of the number of stacks you have in rec. Only use 4 stacks and save the last for Confiteor. Failure to do so may result in missing your Confiteor. Okay, so that concludes the standard opener. Let's move on to the pre-pull opener. This opener is recommended for fights that have early downtime and will cause you to lose the use of FFXIV. A 20 to 22 second countdown is preferred. Use Fight or Flight at 18 or 16 seconds, Pod at 4 seconds, and Holy Spirit at 2. If you are not main tanking and have high ping, you can gap close right after the first Holy Spirit to keep intervene in Fight or Flight. Start with applying your Goring Blade combo and using all your OGCDs, including FFXIV. Then simply begin your rec combo. Easy as that. For Holy Spirits, finish with Confiteor, and finish with your Blade combo. Both openers lead into your standard loop. Your loop is a basic rotation that follows the opener under full uptime. Keep both charges of Intervene and Fight or Flight. Keep Circle of Scorn and Expatiate on cooldown. This first version of the standard loop begins with the Royal Authority combo, followed by your 3 atonements. Then use your Goring Blade combo while applying Fight or Flight after Fast Blade. Follow that with your Royal Authority combo again, spend your 3 atonements, and reapply your Goring Blade right at the end of Fight or Flight. Start your rec window here, rinse, and repeat. Be sure that your Fight or Flight windows have 2 Goring Blades, one applied in the beginning and one reapplied at the end. Make sure they also have an Expatiate, Circle of Scorn, and both charges of your Intervenes, since they are all buffed during your Fight or Flight window. Failure to do so will result in a loss. This second version of the standard loop is pretty much exactly the same, except you drop 1 unbuffed atonement as shown here. This will turn your loop from 64 seconds to 61 seconds. This version can be a potency gain throughout a fight, depending on how fight timings line up and because of how well it naturally lines up with raid buffs. Performing these openers and loops correctly will ensure that your dots maintain 100% timing on the boss and keep your buff windows strong, thus enabling higher DPS. I highly recommend spending time on the striking dummy and practicing these rotations. Having it down and building muscle memory will make it easier to weave in other abilities like your defensive cooldowns, which is critical in high-end content. Now that we've gone over how to hit hard as Paladin, let's get to utilizing your defensives. Great mitigation makes a great tank. These level of encounters generally hit harder, especially if you are main tanking. I know with fights that have enraged timers, you still have to deal damage, and I literally just taught you how to do that. However, you are a tank first. It is more intuitive to learn how to mitigate properly over dealing high optimized damage. I couldn't count how many times tanks miss out on reprisal for AoEs, or almost fold up to a tank buster because they were either late or were too into the rotation. With that out of the way, let's go over the oath gauge. First tip is to get the most value out of your oath gauge. You have 3 actions that require 50 gauge each: Holy Sheltron, Intervention, and Cover. One common mistake most paladins make is not utilizing their oath gauge enough. Now in 6.0, paladins begin encounters with 100 gauge, making it less of an excuse. As the fight progresses, you want to make sure you are not sitting at 100 gauge for too long. If you are at full gauge, you should be thinking to yourself, is there a mechanic that requires me to protect myself? Then use Sheltron. Or, is there a mechanic that requires me to protect a party member? Then use Intervention or Cover. If not, you can either spend it on a Sheltron for yourself to help mitigate auto attacks if you are main tanking, or spend it on an Intervention for the main tank if you are an off tank. There will be some cases where literally nothing is happening in the fight, and you can't really help that. Having this mindset will help maximize your oath gauge utility and save runs. Next tip is don't be selfish. Let's hit the head on Intervention and Cover once more. Intervention is a great defensive cooldown and should be utilized more. A lot of times, I'll see the main tank take a buster, but the Paladin never gives them Intervention. Not only is this free mitigation for them, but it can also be buffed when Rampart or Sentinel is active. For this reason as well, Paladins are great for taking double tank busters, because you can just pop your mitigation on yourself and give the other tank an Intervention for insane mitigation. And now with the regen effects added to Intervention, This makes it even better to spam on the main tank if you are overcapped on Oath Gauge and nothing is happening except auto attacks. Cover is more niche than anything. There are certain situations where this ability can be used instead of a tank swap, such as E9S, where you would use cover to get the magic vuln and break the cover by going farther from your target so that they can take the buster normally. This tech helps restrict the boss facing so melee DPS can hit positionals without freaking out. Cover is also like an oh shit button for a low party member that's about to take an AoE hit. If they are low enough to where intervention cannot save them, cover will. You can also cover a healer that is healer LB3ing to ensure the LB goes off without the fear of the healer dying before the cast. I know it can be hard to target and weave these two cooldowns without crip walking on your keyboard, so that may be a reason why a lot of paladins don't use these abilities. So here's a trick I use to make it easier. I have a macro set up for each party position and 2 hotbars next to my party list. So I would just have to click on the icon next to the party member to activate the skill. You can also use a mouse over macro, which means you just have to put your mouse over the party member and activate the skill. I found the hotbar method to be easier for me, but to each their own. Now let's talk about AoE mitigation. The trade-off for Paladin missing one personal defensive cooldown is they have one more party mitigation tool than the other tanks. Your party mitigation consists of Divine Veil, Passage of Arms, and Reprisal. Reprisal should be alternated between both tanks, as it will override the other, so plan accordingly with your co-tank. Divine Veil initiates a buff that has to be activated by a GCD that heals you. You have 30 seconds to proc it. Forehead tip: you can now activate your Divine Veil proc with Holy Spirit or Holy Circle, since it is a GCD and it also heals you, meaning if you are in your rec window and an AoE is coming up, you can use Divine Veil and proc it immediately. When Veil is procced, it will place a shield and heal all party members except yourself. It lasts 30 seconds or until it is broken. Using this preemptively will help regen the party up before the actual hit from the AoE. Passage of Arms is a cast lock skill that creates a safe cone behind you. Party members in that safe zone will take 15% less damage. Any movement from you after using Passage of Arms will stop the animation. While under downtime, when the boss is not targetable, it is safe to stay there and look cool while you protect the party from the incoming damage. However, you can still hit the boss if it is active and still use Passage of Arms. The mitigation effect from Passage of Arms is a lingering effect, which lasts for 5 seconds, so you can flash it on your party and go right back to hitting the boss. My last tip is to plan your cooldown. Great mitigation makes a great tank. Forehead tip: you have 3 main personal cooldowns: Sentinel, Rampart, and Sheltron. When taking a buster, use either Sentinel or Rampart, but always pair it with Sheltron. Holy Sheltron is your best friend for Paladin. At 100 gauge, you can use this skill literally back to back. If also being used for a tank buster, be sure to use it within 4 seconds of taking the hit, as the first 4 seconds of using Holy Sheltron gives you bonus mitigation. Each fight is scripted. It's a dance. Through practice and enough repetition, you will start to get a feel for when things unfold, such as AoEs, tank busters, auto attacks. Each fight is different, so plan your mitigation around their timeline. Timing your cooldowns correctly will increase the value you get out of them, which is especially important for Paladin. For example, if the boss autos for a few seconds and casts a raid-wide party hit just before a tank buster, then using Rampart, which lasts 20 seconds, to cover all those hits as well as the buster, is more value than just popping it right before the tank buster. Timing is everything when it comes to using your cooldown. Play proactively instead of reactively. And this concludes my Paladin guide. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions for the next video. Hopefully my tips help with any aspiring Paladin mains. Next up will be Warrior. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time.